miss talking on this podcast, and I hope you miss me too. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Dr. Lisa. Happy New Year! New year, new things. I'm very happy, and I hope you all are as well. Well, we are finally here. Although I love talking about kids who can see ghosts, and I have a ton of experiences working with those children, I also have a lot of other information to provide to all of you by way of answering your questions. So many of you reached out and asked special education questions, parenting questions, diagnosing questions. Students have reached out and asked different things about becoming a psychologist. So here I am, ready, rested, and able to address most of your needs. I'm not going to say all because I don't know everything, although I think I do, but I don't. And so, what I can answer, I am going to be answering for you in this new year, starting today. So, I am still taking your comments and your questions about nebulous children or children who can see ghosts. I will still tell those stories probably every October because I have quite a bit of them. But I think I've been ordained to talk more about psychology now, and that's what I'm doing. That's my goal today and going forward. So, if you have questions and you want me to address your question, remember you don't have to disclose your name to me. You can do what some people are doing, which is putting the question on my website. I have to approve the comments that go public, and people have been using names other than theirs in order to maintain confidentiality. Also, you can send me messages on Facebook. You can send me messages on Instagram. You can do whatever it takes to get your question answered. If you want to text me or leave a message for me, you can do so at 765-205-1959. Or you can email me at kidscanseeghosts@gmail.com. So I look forward to hearing from you all. So listen, I had a question come in and I didn't even realize I wrote that much about this question. So we are not going to be able to finish it today, not the answer to it. Whew. Dr. Lisa can write her little heart out. So this question came in and I had a lot to say to this mom, include or dad, I'm not sure who it is, including some of my own experiences being a parent. And so I am going to start by telling you all, if you have not read this question and the answers on my website yet, you can do so. My website is my name, LisaLigginsChambers.com. It's that simple. You can read about this question under the heading Questions. That's it. It's that simple. So I hope you go read it. I look forward to it. Let's do it. All right, this question came in and it said, help. Like, help was the first word. I thought, oh boy, my once lovable child has turned into a monster. You know what? I don't even take that negatively at all. If you've ever had a loving little baby who gets older and goes to middle school, because this child that this parent is talking about is a middle schooler, then you kind of understand what this parent is going through, because those little boogers totally change when they go to middle school. They are not your little babies anymore, and they are trying to establish themselves, their independence. They think that they have some authority because they know a little bit more. And so as they get older, you start looking at your kids as, well, wait a minute, what happened to my baby? Right? And so this parent is saying this is a child who probably has started to smell themselves a little bit. and maybe getting a little sassy, and boys can be sassy too. So we just can't assume the gender in this question. I don't think. I'd have to look at my website. But anyway, yes. So this parent is like, what do I do? This child is a seventh grader, and this mother said, I do not recognize my child any longer. And I empathize if you are that mother or father, or that mother is actually listening. I completely empathize because I remember that feeling. And actually, I have a middle schooler now. So I'm in that feeling too, mom or dad, whoever wrote the question. I think it was the mother. So sometimes I'm remembering this stuff, but I'm not actually looking at my website. So you guys can tell me if it's a mother or father. More than likely, this is a mother. And so it just kind of feels like these kids grow up too fast, and you do kind of ask yourself, well, where's my baby, or what happened to my baby? And so what I want to say is, no matter how old the kids are, they are still your babies, right? That's not going to change. What changes is their personalities, their demeanor, you know, their ability to do other things because they are getting older. And most importantly, you are going to start to see their bodies changing and their personalities. So when you think about it from that perspective, middle school is it's not just hard on teachers. These are hard times for teachers, especially in middle school. But these kids are also changing. Their hormones are shifting. Their brain chemistry is changing because of their hormones, and their body is changing. So it takes a lot of extra patience to not just have a middle schooler, but to also have a high schooler. And none of us are perfect at it. I know I wasn't. I know my oldest daughter will tell you, no way was she perfect at it. But as parents, we get through it. And so, remember, your kids don't see you as people that they can talk to, right? Somebody that they can easily come to and say, hey, I have all these things changing within me. I don't know what to do about it. They don't even understand it, right? So debates happen. They become little know-it-alls. If it helps, that's their personality developing. And like I always tell parents, you are not raising a baby, you are raising an adult, right? So this is a start of these kids, you know, transitioning to adulthood. What we have to do is we have to shape them into the adults that we think they should be. And that's our responsibility. So you are absolutely correct when you think that this is a different child, because at the core, this is the child that you've, brought into the world, but is rapidly changing. And so they don't always understand us either, right? I think Will Smith said it best when he said parents just don't understand, They don't see us as being former middle schoolers. You guys know this already. They don't see us as being former high schoolers. They think it's funny. Like my kids think it's funny when I tell them little stories about when I was in high school or when I was in middle school, because I still remember middle school. You know, I think I slipped and told one of my daughters, that I think it was my middle daughter, that, oh yeah, we used to do this dance when we used to go to the club, blah, 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 And she kind of looked at me and she said, you used to go to the club? And I said, oh, girl, yes. When we were in college, we were in the clubs. You should see me and my friends from college, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, oh my God, mommy, you were that young? And I just kind of looked at her like, Well, how do you think I got to 50? I had to go to middle school first. You know, they don't, in their brains, they don't see us that way. And so the first person that you want them to run to is you, like they used to when they were babies. But they stop and they go to their friends and they go to their teachers. And one of my kids loves her principal, so she goes to the principal, you know, and that's fine with me. So other people come into their lives and help to change them or to raise them. For example, that same principal has full reign to shape my child, you know, because I trust her. And so it is a rapid shift. And when everything happens so fast, they do seem like little monsters. So I completely get it. How do you deal with it? How do you deal with the personality changes in these middle schoolers? And how do you deal with all of the things that they are going through, including study habits and the beginning stages of interacting, you know, with the opposite gender or the opposite sex, right? So getting into that stage of, you know, liking girls or liking boys, all of that stuff is new. So how do you deal with it? I want you to remember something. You are the umbilical cord to your child's world. And I say that strongly for mothers, right? You are the one that no matter what that kid goes through is going to come back to you for guidance and wisdom. And let me tell you something. They go away in high school. When they get to college, they start coming back. And don't forget that. This is just the most difficult part because of this transition that they're going through in middle school. So don't you lose hope that these things will change, because they will. And so while these kids are going through these various transitions, these bodily changes, these hormonal shifts, you know, being in larger crowds in school, in middle school, meeting so many different people, starting to have a mind of their own, it is you that will cultivate them into the person that they will be in the future. And so it's a developmental process, not just for the kids, but also the parents. And each moment that you have with these kids will be the time when you will have a teachable moment. And you know what? You don't realize it until later. That everything you are teaching your child and everything that you are saying to him or her, or they, will pay off in the future. So, for example, my oldest daughter said something to me, and I don't quite remember what it is, but she said something to me when she graduated from college. Let me get some water real quick. My voice is getting hoarse. And I remember I looked at her and I stopped. And I had an aha moment. And I said to myself, damn it, she listened to me. Like literally, it was like the angels sang and they spoke to me, and I said, she gets it. After all these years, she listened, right? So they are processing what we say, what we try to teach them. These teachable moments are beneficial to their growth, right? And even if you say it 15 times to your little monster, those little monsters grow up and they hear you. I mean, think about yourself. You know, I think about myself. When I saw this question, I remember being a little monster toward my mom, you know, and then later on, and even now, you know, as a 50-year-old woman, I can quote many lessons that my mother said to me or that she shared with me or she tried to teach me when I was younger. So your kids will do the same thing. One of the things that I do want to share with you is that you need to be one step ahead of your kids, though, right? Kids are smart, they have technology. They're a lot more savvy than we were in the 80s. Obviously, we didn't have, technology, right? Which is a huge problem, especially when you try to discipline these kids. You have to be a little bit more creative. Like, I can tell you, there were times when we would go on the laptop and just shut Instagram down, period. We've deleted Instagram pages, and we have shut off cell phones. And then it would be, but I have a laptop, and we would take laptops. I mean, these kids are different. So you always have to be one step of these kids because they have all kinds of ways of accessing things that you and I, if you are around my age or close, never dreamed of, right? And so it can be difficult to manage. You may not like doing it, you may not like discussing it, and your kids may not either, but it's necessary. So I want you to do it. Let's move on to discipline. Because a part of the what this parent called the monster behavior is probably in relation to some of that sassiness that our middle school kids exhibit. I worked in a middle school not too long ago, and I thought, good Lord, these kids are cursing and fighting each other. And I can't imagine, when they go home, how these parents feel or what they're thinking or how they're managing these kind of behaviors, because middle school is just hard. So listen, I am going to talk about this some more next week because I think it's necessary. But what I am finding is that a lot of parents are either disciplining their kids and not being consistent with it, or they are very afraid to discipline their kids. And I'm not sure where that comes from, but I am here to tell you that you have to discipline your kids and you cannot be afraid to discipline them. And when I say discipline, it's supposed to hurt. Discipline is supposed to hurt. That does not mean that you are obligated to spank your kids. Some people believe in spanking and some people don't. And both opinions are just fine because they're your kids. So you structure discipline to manage your child's behavior any way you see fit. I don't know why this is still a debate. The bottom line is discipline is necessary. Now, you don't beat your kids, folks. So don't pull out those extension cords that were used back in the day. Don't pull out stuff that harms your kids. There's a difference between harming kids and abusing them versus using disciplinary strategies such as spanking or punishment. There's a difference. Punishment hurts. It's all right for them to hurt. If you don't make them hurt, society's going to do it. One of the problems that I would consistently see at this age level, and this mom or dad was talking about middle school, I think a mom was talking about middle school, is as these kids start to get bigger. So all of you with little babies, do you want your little babies to turn into these monster big babies and then you are dealing with the kid the size of you or even bigger who lacks discipline? And that's a question mark. Believe me, that is something that you don't want. So there's no need in being afraid to punish your kids in order to shape their behaviors. You must do it. When they get old enough, take car keys, and if you tell them for 2 weeks you're not driving the car, my God, keep it for 2 weeks. I don't care if they're a good kid. Believe me, you want to keep those car keys. If you tell them, for example, they can't play a sport because their grades were low, so they can't play football, for example, for 2 games, I'm going to need you to stick with it, even if your son is the star quarterback. Your son will appreciate that later in life, as opposed to getting away with things that are unacceptable just because he's an athlete. If you are against discipline, I'm going to tell you how I feel about that. This is just from a parenting perspective, not necessarily psychology. From a parenting perspective, I always say if you don't discipline your kids, you don't love them, because discipline is love. My kids, for example, wouldn't be who they are or who they're turning out to be if I didn't discipline them. They had to be disciplined because that was my job as a parent. Now, as a psychologist, I want you to make sure that you understand how to discipline your kids, because some people don't. They don't know what to do. And so a lot of times they will watch negative behaviors or poor behaviors and they will let them slide. I can't tell you how many times I'm in the store, for example, and I see oh God, I just thought of a recent situation. A mom was walking with her daughter, and the daughter was on the cell phone, and the mother was like, "Get off the phone. We're in the store, blah, blah, blah." And this kid was as big as me, which I'm not that big. I'm only 5'4". And the mother was about my height, and the daughter is about that height. And she's like telling her mother, "Shut the F up. I'm on the phone. Don't tell me what to do. You can't this and you can't." Lord have mercy. I'm like all of you listening to that story. I I tell you what you know what? I said to myself, "Oh, I wish my kid would." And I was just looking at this girl like, "Oh boy. Mm-mm-mm. You had a right mother. Because if it was me, you would probably be on the ground telling me to shut the F up on a cell phone I pay for." Woo! I had to fan myself on that one. And I mean that. She probably would have been on the floor. Some of you understand that. You don't let things like that slide. This mother didn't do anything. She just said, "Well, I asked you to get off the phone." Excuse you, snatch the phone. I mean, do whatever it takes. This kid was clearly a teenager. But what we can't do is let these kind of things slide. And we can't let them slide because what kind of adult are you raised? What kind of child are you raising to be an adult if they can talk to you this way in the world? And she thought she could probably talk to me that way. She probably thought she could talk to all of you that way. And then when she is, 20 years old and she talks to the wrong person that way and they retaliate against her, then you have a whole nother problem. It also sets up a sense of entitlement. It really does. She felt entitled to talk on her phone. You see what I'm saying? So you have to nip some of these behaviors in the bud. And you have to do it consistently. And having a teenager behaving that way that girl did, you can still discipline them because you are the parent, you are the adult, and you know how to make your kids have better choices even if you're not doing them. So you don't let them get away with those kind of behaviors either. Um, I am going to tell you a short story about my oldest daughter um, that happened to me when she was a senior in high school. And I think I put this in the blog as well. And then we'll continue to talk about this question next week. She was the only senior basketball player for her school year. And when it was over, the celebration for her, they have senior night, the celebration, she and I were walking. Oh, actually, I was walking back to the bleachers, and I think she had to go with her basketball team. And this was varsity. And a man came up to me and his daughter, and I'll never forget it. And he said to me, well, let me backtrack. A lot of you know what happens at senior night. They talk about all your accomplishments and all that stuff. My daughter was a scholar athlete. And so they talked about that. So when the man came up to me, you know, he told me congratulations because my daughter had announced she was going to go to Vanderbilt. And he said, how did you do it? And I said, do what? Because I didn't know him, so I wasn't sure, what he was talking about or where he was coming from, you know what I mean? And so he said, how did you get such a good daughter? How did you raise such a good daughter? And I was caught off guard by that question because I wasn't thinking about it at all. And she was just my baby, even though she was 18, she was just my baby. She was 17. And I thought about it, and his daughter was standing next to him, and she had a major attitude, arms were crossed, and everything. And I looked at her and I looked at him, and he said, how? How did you do it? And you know what I said to him? I said, discipline. And he looked at me strange, and he said, is that all it took? And I said, yep. I said, and I have a village that helped me raise her, you know. Didn't do it by myself, you know. But the point was, he said, all right. And he looked at his daughter and they walked away. And I never forgotten that. Listen, discipline is good for kids. Stop being afraid of it. If your kid is acting like a little monster, I want you to take some steps to address some of the behaviors that you are seeing. And if the behaviors are within you as a parent, I want you to recognize that. And I want you to take steps to change your behaviors as well. So if you are, for example, trying to treat your middle schooler as if he or she is a baby, you have to recognize that that part of their lives is gone and they're trying to be older kids to you now with different ideas and different ways of thinking. So sometimes it's not actually our kids, sometimes it's us. Here's a live example. I had to change because I had to realize my youngest child is no longer a baby, and that was really hard for me. So I hear you. It was really hard for me. But he is not, and he has new ideas and new conversations, and I had to start thinking in terms of what he needs from me now. And it came from my husband, who said to me, you have to get on his level now and do the things that he enjoys and not think of him as he's still a little baby anymore. He is the youngest, he is your son, but he's not a baby. So sometimes it's us. And in that case, it was me. So I said that to say, in these last two examples, I want you to understand that you are not alone. There are plenty of us who feel the same way and who have felt the same way about our middle schoolers. So hang in there. There's more to talk about with this question. I want to dive into special education, for example, to answer this question, and I will do that next week. I look forward to talking to you all again, and it's good to be back. You all have a good rest of the week. Thank you for listening.